Shoob, proud of our performance. Hopefully, we do just as good with our Week 10 performance. And with that being said, Shoob, App State -3 versus Coastal Carolina. What do you got?
So this is a big game in the Sun Belt. Both these teams are contenders in the Sun Belt Eastern Division. And App State, after kind of bottoming out a little bit, they've seemingly quietly been on a roll. They've won a couple games against weaker
Mhm.
opponents, but they still have a chance to win this division. And then you got Coastal Carolina sitting there at 7-1. I have a lean in this game. I was kind of
Yes,
hoping
you
that the
do.
team that is favored would not be favored because I'm liking them a lot. And I know I'm biased because I have App State in my team draft.
I have Coastal.
Yeah, so we know where our allegiances are here in our and for our fantasy purposes, but I'm gonna roll with the team that's favored here. I think Coastal Carolina isn't quite as good as their record shows, and I really believe that App State is sort of in a ascending mode right now. So
Okay.
therefore, I'm gonna pick App State to win, and I'm gonna pick them to cover. Even though it's -3, I think that they can win by just over a field goal, but I would expect this one to be pretty competitive either way.
I'm with you, Shoob. And I think this one's a toss up. I think it's a coin flip. I mean, the line is suggestive of that. It's not one, or it's not a PK or 1.5 or anything, but a three goes either way. That's really close by any estimation. I am going to take Coastal, man. I'm going to stay loyal to my team draft. I mean, I took them early in the season just because, I mean, I felt that they were one of the better teams in that conference. And, Jamie Chadwell, ride it while you're hot. They've got a good quarterback in play, and just ride your momentum, man. This is the best team. Well, last year was the best team they've had in a long time, but they still have some talent over there, and I think they can compete with App State, who has been inconsistent in some games. So we'll see which team shows up.
Yeah, I respect it. I respect it. Staying with our team drafts there. That's also a Thursday night game, by the way, in case you're wondering. But let's move on. Another weekday game. This one's a Friday night action out west in the Pac 12. Oregon State into the top 25 in the college football playoff rankings at number 23. They are at Washington, but Washington's the one favored. The Huskies are in a 3.5 point favorite. What is your lean here?
I don't have any confidence in this one, Shoob. I really don't. But I told myself when I first looked at this, because I hedged twice last week, that I wouldn't hedge on this. And so I'm not going to do that out of pure respect, because I may have to hedge later on. So I won't hedge on this one, and I'm gonna rock with Oregon State. Um, I really like the bees, man. Washington has had a good offensive attack. Penix has been pretty solid over there, but at the same time, man, I think Oregon State doesn't get enough love. They're finally getting some love in the CFP rankings this week. I think they're ranked 23 or 24. But ultimately, man, I like them as a dog, man. Let's go bees. Build the dam.
Hey, I like it. Oregon State and Washington, both of these teams, frankly, both of these teams are 6-2. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like, both of these teams are very quietly still Pac-12 contenders.
Hey, which podcast said Oregon State would be over?
Oh, it's a podcast that rhymes with can and tube. And that
Oh,
podcast is going to be
mhm.
correct this week because that win total is going to cash because Oregon State is winning this game. I'm picking the underdog here. I'm with you. I like the Beavs on the road. I
Build the
think it will
dam,
be
baby.
competitive. Build the dam. I think it will be competitive, even with Oregon State's quarterback issues and Nolan kind of struggling. The backup has played a little bit here and there. And honestly, he's just as good as Nolan. I like Oregon State. I just think they're more of a complete team, better defense. And yeah, I just think they're slightly the better team. And I think they get it done here on the road. So I like that value with Oregon State, especially on the spread here at +3.5.
I like it. I like it. I didn't think we'd both pick the underdog, but let's go. Build the dam, baby. What about Baylor, Oklahoma, man? -3.5. This is a very important game for Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma is virtually out of the Big 12 championship conversation, but this is really important in establishing their identity and getting some momentum to move forward into like late season and into next year, into the Venables era. In addition, it's also important for Baylor to trying to corral things and kind of keep their status quo up, because they've had kind of a disappointing start to their season. So this is a very pivotal game for both teams. Oklahoma's at home. What is your take, Shoob?
So I agree. It's a important game for both teams, really. And really for Baylor, because if you look at Baylor's schedule thus far, they still have everything in front of them. Like Baylor kind of has been written off in the Big 12 because they've got off to a slow start, but they only have 2 conference losses. And you look at the teams that they've played and the teams they've yet to play, they still haven't played TCU. They still haven't played Kansas State. They still haven't played Texas. They still have to play all those teams. And if they beat those teams and run the table, Baylor can be in the Big 12 championship race.
Hmm.
And obviously, this is the first step here. You got to go on the road and beat the Sooners in Norman. And listen, man, I hate to do this. I really hate to do this, man, because I gave you crap for this last week, but
Oh my God, you're
it's
hedging.
it's coin flip city, man. 3.5. Both of these teams right now appear to have bottomed out and appear to be playing a little bit better recently. I think we both agree with that. Oklahoma's at home, which is probably why they're favored here. If this one was in Waco, I think Baylor would be favored. It's coin flip
Mhm.
season, man. It's the Big 12. Like this is like I don't have that strong of a lean in this game to confidently say one team's going to win or the other. So when you give me that 3.5, man, I'm gonna I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna be that guy that I gave you crap for being last week, and I'm gonna take Baylor to cover that 3.5 and give me the Sooners to win outright.
Shoob, I'll save you some time. I'm going Baylor outright, both.
Ooh,
Baylor to
ooh,
win, which obviously means they're going to cover. Look, I think year one of Venables, we have seen improvement with this Oklahoma team, but this Baylor team, as you said, has mostly been written off, and they're still a very quality team. They are improving as the season goes on. That is one thing I've noticed about them. And sure, they've been in some battles, but that's the nature of the Big 12, man. And Baylor usually plays OU pretty well. They play them competitively, and OU is in a little bit of a fumble now. Like, I mean, they are improving, but they still haven't established their true identity yet. I think Baylor has an identity, and I think that's going to play to Baylor's advantage, and they're going to win this game.
yeah. I mean, if this one was in Waco, like let's not get it twisted. I'd be taking Baylor, but I respect it. And Baylor looked pretty good last week against Tech on the road, so totally could see it happening. Like I said, 50-50 game. All right, moving on here. A lot of you probably are here for this game. Number one, not Georgia, not Georgia. Number one, Tennessee. The Tennessee Volunteers are number one in the college football playoff rankings, and they're going to face number 3, Georgia. It is at Georgia, and Georgia is an 8.5-point favorite. This is going to be one of the biggest games of the entire season up to this point. Who do you got?
Shoob, 8.5 is kind of disrespectful for how amazing Tennessee has been. Let's get that out of the way. So Tennessee obviously is going to get this cover. That's what I'm taking. Now, this game has so many implications, man. Imagine a world where Tennessee beats Alabama, but loses to Georgia, and then Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship, and then Tennessee does not make the college football playoff and Alabama does. That is a tough pill to swallow, and that very well could happen if they don't beat Georgia. But luckily for the Vols, I don't think that's going to happen. I am taking the Vols both ways. I think the
Ooh.
Vols are going to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they're the better team this year. And I feel like Tennessee, they might be the team of destiny this year. Maybe not to win it, but certainly to make the playoffs.
Wow, going with the Vols both ways. So I think a lot of people, there's a lot of talking points for this game. And one of them is, okay, well, Tennessee beat Alabama. They were at home. They were away in this game. Georgia's defense is a lot better than Alabama's, and Georgia's defense will not allow Tennessee to bomb away on them and on their secondary like they did against Bama. And I do agree with that to a certain extent. Georgia has the number one most efficient defense in the entire country. But you know who has the number 2 most efficient defense in the entire country? Alabama. If you really look at it, how much better is Georgia's defense than Alabama? According to the efficiency numbers, it's not like Georgia is miles ahead of Alabama in terms of their defense. And maybe a lot of people, maybe a lot of you don't really realize that. But if you look it up, Tennessee bombed away on a really good defense. It is very hard for me to go against the Vols right now the way that they've been playing. Their defense has even gotten better. They nearly shut out Kentucky last week. And the thing is, Georgia's at home in this one. And I don't know what it is, man, but I do like Tennessee to cover. I do think Tennessee will be very competitive in this game. I do believe that they will have a chance to win, but I'm not picking them to win, man. I'm going with the dogs. I'm going with the
Woof, woof,
dogs.
woof, woof, woof.
I just think that Georgia is a very complete team, and Georgia will show up for this one. They're at home. It just seems like one of those games where I think the experience, the talent of Georgia is going to really just kind of win the day for them. But let's not get it twisted, man. I really do think that Tennessee will put up a great fight and will cover this. So Georgia to win, Tennessee to cover.
All right, man. Let's move back to the Big 12. Another team beating up on another team. Like there's just so much parity in the Big 12 this year. We have Oklahoma State favored -2 in Lawrence, Kansas to take on the Jayhawks. Is this bounce back city for the Oklahoma State Cowboys? Jalen Daniels may be returning for Kansas. Is this bounce back city or is this spiral city for the Cowboys?
Boy, we're not really doing ourselves any favors here by putting this game on the slate because both of these quarterbacks right now are sort of, we don't know what their situation is going into Saturday. As of right now, we're recording this on Tuesday. Spencer Sanders is questionable to play because he got hurt last week against Kansas State in that massacre. And then Kansas, like you just said, Jalen Daniels. We don't know if he's going to play. It's been speculated that he's going to be back this week, but we don't know that for sure. So the line is sitting at Oklahoma State by -2. This is what's going to come down to me, man. I said previously on this podcast that if Oklahoma State doesn't have Spencer Sanders healthy, they become the worst team in the Big 12.
Yep, they
And I
do.
would have said that before the Kansas State game. Like before they played Kansas State, I think we both would agree with that. So that
Mhm.
Kansas State massacre, that doesn't even affect my opinion on this team in that regard. So if you're comparing Kansas with their potential backup quarterback, Jason Bean, versus Oklahoma State with their backup quarterback, Gunnar Gundy, Bean has the experience. Bean's a little bit older. Bean is a very competent backup quarterback.
He's a good player, yeah.
So that's the difference for me, man. Like Spencer Sanders could play and Jalen Daniels could not, but the net value here is I think it's safer to actually take Kansas here, and that's what I'm going to do. And let's not mention that Kansas is coming off of a bye week as well, so they're going to be healthy. Jalen Daniels might play. If he doesn't, oh well, that's all right. I don't think Kansas is going to be a pushover. And then as far as Oklahoma State, man, they're just banged up right now, and it's very hard for me to trust them. Even if they hadn't like gotten massacred by Kansas State last week, I'd be saying the same thing. And I'm going to take Kansas, and I feel like it's just more of a safety pick more than anything.
You know, Shoob, I'm with you. I'm taking the Jayhawks as well. Just the uncertainty. I think Spencer Sanders will play, but the thing is, how effective will he be when he's hobbled? Oklahoma State's had very bad offensive line play. They're not getting production from their running backs. They're one of the worst rushing teams in the entire Big 12. So Kansas, with either option under Lance Leipold, prolific offense, man. They're doing great. We have noticed Oklahoma State has a terrible, terrible secondary, and they were kind of bailed out in the Texas game by Quinn Ewers just flat out missing throws. Their secondary just could have so many more passing yards added to their deficit. But those stats don't affect them, of course, in terms of their efficiency because viewers didn't hit those throws. And so I think Oklahoma State's secondary is just, it's not going to be a good thing. And if Gunnar Gundy trots out there for whatever reason, or Spencer can't go after a quarter or so, this could turn to a massacre. So I like Kansas.
And get the Cowboys out of the state of Kansas, man, because we don't want to see them get beat down 2 times in a row going up there to that state. But let's
If they
move
lose
on here.
48-0 again to Kansas, man, I might just have to like drink bleach, but we'll see.
All right, so Alabama at LSU. That's right, LSU is ranked number 10. We're a little kind of, I don't know about that ranking, but they're ranked number 10, and they're playing Alabama is ranked number 6. Bama,
Xan has them
however,
ranked number 15, LSU.
Bama, however, is a 13.5 point favorite. So it's a top 10 matchup, man. It's a top 10 matchup on paper, but Bama's a 13.5 point favorite. What do you got here?
I like Bama. They're a good team. They're the better team. LSU, like, look, man, LSU's got a quality team. Their FPI ranking is high. That's why they're rated so high. And of course, you and I kind of touched on this in part one of this pod that we think LSU is rated that high, just so that way if Bama wins, they can chalk it up as, look, well, Bama has a top 10 win, and use that as an excuse to potentially elevate them over Clemson and Michigan and put them back in the playoff conversation. So I mean, these are all things that I think have been done purposely. But conspiracies aside, I am going to take Alabama to win. I'm That's not really a question to me. But however, this game is in Death Valley, man, and this is a quality LSU team. Now, Jaden Daniels has been playing really well lately, and this Alabama secondary struggles at times. And I think this home field advantage will play to LSU's benefit. I think Alabama will win by 2 scores, but not by 14. So I'm going to take LSU on the cover.
This game is also a night game as well. It's 6 p.m. local kickoff. So a night game in Death Valley. Bama
It's going
coming
to be
in there.
electric.
I'm sure the environment will be nuts. I'm with you here, man. I'm taking Bama to win because at the end of the day, they still are the better team, and I really have a hard time seeing Alabama dropping a game the rest of the regular season. Like I do think they'll be able to run the table up until the SEC championship game. It's very
Mm-hmm.
rare that Nick Saban teams lose more than one game during the regular season, and they already have that loss there. So I think they will win. They've been in this situation many a times. Like they have Bryce Young. He's arguably the best player in all college football. Like I totally trust Bama to go in there
And
and
they also have
win.
Will Anderson.
Exactly. But as far as the spread, man, that's the more interesting part about this. I'm kind of with you. I'm honestly I was kind of at one point leaning towards taking Alabama because I just have so much confidence in Alabama, but I think I have a little bit too much confidence in them. You're right about everything. LSU's been playing really well lately, and I think that will continue. Home field and all that. It's going to be LSU by maybe losing this game like 7 to 10 by 7 to 10 points. I think that's what it's going to happen. So LSU covering.
All right, man. Big 12 championship implications on the line. Texas minus 2.5, trying to salvage their season and potentially still position themselves for the Big 12 championship at Kansas State, who needs to continue to win to get to the Big 12 championship game. This will be a crazy tiebreaker. This is a very, very important game for both teams. Who you got, Shoob?
So I say it every single week when things are looking great because they're looking really great right now for Kansas State. You just beat down a top 10 team 48 to nothing. You're feeling yourselves. Well, it's not as great as it always seems. In fact, Vegas decided that you're not even going to be a favorite coming off that huge win. You're going to be an underdog by 2.5 points against Texas, who has 3 losses and is ranked lower than you. Well, again, we say it so many times here. This is the difference between power ratings and poll rankings.
Mm-hmm.
Texas is ranked lower than Kansas State, but Vegas thinks that Texas is the better team. In fact, they were 2.5 point favorite on the road, which is still a little bit surprising to me. Everywhere Texas is still power rated top 10, and there's a reason for that. Even though they have 3 losses, they really could be undefeated if things just bounce a certain way. So, with all that being said, it seems really hard to kind of fade Kansas State right now. But you know what? Texas, they've gotten a lot of flack for losing to inferior Big 12 competition over the years. But you know what? There's one team that Texas has had their number in this conference, and that's been Kansas State. Texas has gotten Kansas State like the last 4 years in a row, I believe, or something like that. And you know what? I hate to do this to Kansas State coming off that win, but I'm picking Texas. I'm picking Texas. There's a reason why they're favored in this game. Like, if you ever doubt the spread, there's a reason for it. And I'm going to be the guy that fades a team that just won 48 to nothing over a top 10 team. I'm going to be that guy. So I'm picking Texas, but doesn't make me feel great to do this in all honesty, but that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas State is my Cinderella, man. I really love Kansas State, despite them absolutely shellacking my team. Again, like I have so much appreciation for that program. It's literally a program that develops and turns low 3 stars, 2 stars into like 4 or 5 star guys. While Texas gets 4 or 5 star guys, turns them into threes. Like no knock on Texas. Texas is very good. I'm just joking, but they have a great team, man. And this is going to come down to how well Quinn Ewers plays, to be honest with you, because Kansas State has a really good defense. They have a productive offense. I think it's going to be a really close game, hard fought game. And it's going to come down to obviously turnover margin. I'm going with my heart, man, not my brain. I'm going with my heart. and I'm taking Kansas State to win this game.
Hey, I respect it. I think a lot of you probably really shocked to see me pick Texas, but again,
I'm not shocked because my brain's telling me Texas is going to win this game, but my heart tells me pick K State, man. Ride with them, live through them.
hey, I respect it, man. Hey, if Quinn Ewers just plays a half decent game, this Texas team will be very dangerous. I mean, for all the flack that Quinn Ewers got for his horrible completion percentage against Oklahoma State, like people not realize that Texas nearly won that game despite horrendous quarterback play. Imagine if they
Mm-hmm.
just got half decent quarterback play.
I mean,
So,
Texas is really good. No one's disputing that. Well,
right.
some people dispute that.
Well,
No
a
one
lot of
who
people do.
yeah, no one who like actually like has watched Texas and understands the talent that they have on their roster disputes that.
How about Clemson -4 against Notre Dame? This is kind of a very interesting game. I know Notre Dame hasn't kind of lived up to their billing this year, but
It's a home game for Notre Dame too.
it is. And
It's a night game.
it is. And if there was a spot where Clemson were to trip up, because right now it looks like they are on the path to go undefeated this year, but if they were going to trip up somewhere, it kind of
It's
feels
gonna be
like maybe
here.
this would be the
Yeah,
spot. Notre Dame kind of been really confusing this year. It's really hard to tell if Notre Dame is a good team or not, but
yeah.
Clemson's only a 4-point favorite here. So what's your take?
I mean, like we discussed, man. Clemson wins this game, they're probably going to go undefeated and make the college football playoff. Clemson loses this game, and it's over. Man, Notre Dame at home is big. Night game atmosphere, big. That favors Notre Dame quite a bit. Otherwise, I think Clemson would be roughly a touchdown favorite here, right? I'm gonna hedge. I'm gonna hedge, man. I'm gonna.
I kind of figured just based on your
I'm
tone you
gonna
were going that
hedge.
way, but
Yeah, I can't like honestly like I can totally see Notre Dame winning this game, but Clemson always finds a way to win games that they shouldn't win or that I feel they shouldn't win. Like they may be down a ton of points in the fourth quarter, and then they find a way to somehow scrap it out. They didn't play well in the first three quarters. They find a way to scrap it out. Like there's always some wins like that in Clemson for Clemson every single year. And this may be no exception, man. So I don't have full confidence in just picking it outright. So I've got to hedge, man.
you have a Clemson team that a couple weeks ago played really awful against Syracuse and ended up beating them. They ended up scratching that one out at home. DJU played a terrible game, but they had a bye week this past week. So Clemson has kind of gotten it together. I don't really think
It's a
Clemson's
great
going
time
to
to have a bye week.
exactly. I don't think Clemson's going to have a bad game 2 weeks in a row, 2 games in a row, rather. And you're looking at Notre Dame here. It's kind of like, all right, is Notre Dame really that good? It's just kind of hard to trust them right now. And
They're
I
really
actually feel
hard to
pretty
pin down,
confident
man.
about this one, man. Like, I think Clemson will go in and play a great game. Like, I don't expect them to be sleepwalking like they were against Syracuse. I think Clemson will play their A game. And I actually feel relatively comfortable about this, picking them to win and covering that spread. So give me Clemson -4. Like, I feel solidly comfortable about it. I think Clemson wins by a touchdown or more.
It just depends on what Notre Dame team shows up, man, and who knows how it's been this season. So
Very
it'll be
true.
interesting to see. That will be a game to watch for sure because there's a lot of implications there. What about Florida State -7.5 versus Miami? Miami's been kind of floundering, man. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, this game was one that at one point in the season kind of thought, hey, this might actually be a top 25 game. But Miami, man, it's kind of like with Texas A&M. It's very hard to buy into what Texas A&M is doing right now. Miami's in a very similar situation, if not worse. Like it's very hard to buy into Miami right now. They, had to scrap one out, didn't score a single touchdown against a very awful Virginia team. And Tyler Van Dyke's all banged up. So you have Florida State coming into town. It's your arch rival. Florida State kind of had an up and down season. They've kind of dealt with injuries, kind of a hard team to peg. I'm going to take FSU to win. I think FSU is just a better team. And like I said, I feel like I'd have to be a bit of a crazy person to pick Miami to win this game outright right now. But for some reason, it just seems like things are going so poorly for Miami right now. You're giving me a touchdown and a hook on this spread. Like, do I think Miami can cover this spread and keep it within a touchdown? Yeah, I think they can. Give me Miami to cover that. Not super confident in it, but if you're giving me 7.5, give me that hook. I'm going to take the Canes to cover. I think they will show up for their arch rival. The fans will show up. This is one of the few games where that stadium actually gets full every year. So I'm just kind of banking on that energy and juice and environment down there at Hard Rock for the Canes to cover this.
I think there's going to be a lot more Florida State fans there than they're hoping. There's not going to be such an even distribution. It's going to be like a neutral site game almost.
Even though the juice is not on your side, it's still juice though.
Yes. But with that being said, man, I mean, I think let me use this, and this will tell you where I'm going. I think Florida State's better than Duke, and we know what Duke did to Miami.
Oh, don't remind us, man.
Yeah, so I'm going Florida State both ways. Florida State to cover, Florida State to win. This Miami team's floundering, and quite honestly, this Miami team might be on quit alert. Now, this is a rivalry game. Sure, they may show up for it, but man, I don't know that we're kind of seeing a trend here with these bigger programs who are buying a lot of players, allegedly, like A&M, Miami, but they're continuously underperforming. And it may be a trend of culture, man. And I mean, when you give 18, and this is a whole another segue, I won't dive into it too much, but basically, you give 18-year-olds millions of dollars. I mean, what's their incentive to not go party and stay focused and all this stuff? So that's just where I'm at with that. And I think that's part of Miami's issue. And give me Florida State both ways.
If Van Dyke doesn't play, which his status right now is kind of hazy for this game, I would certainly take Florida State to cover the spread. So I'll kind of caveat that, but I'm going to stick with my Miami pick to cover, because if Van Dyke does play, I legitimately do believe in Miami keeping it close. So, but let's move on. The final game of the slate, Wake Forest coming off of a very puzzling blowout loss to Louisville last week. The Demon Deacons are still ranked number 21, and they're facing NC State, who's number 22. And NC State scraped one out against a really bad Virginia Tech team last week, Thursday night. So big ACC Atlantic Division battle here. What's your lean?
So, I mean, NC State, man, I mean, they lost their starting quarterback. They had so many expectations to start the year. I feel bad for their fan base, man, because it's not often you hear NC State hyped up to be a potential ACC winner. And some people preseason were even talking about them being a potential dark horse for the playoff. And then this is kind of what's happened with their season. The team, I wouldn't say they're completely on quit alert, man, but it's definitely dejecting to be at this point in your season and to be where you are now and to not have your starting quarterback and to barely come off of beating a very poor Virginia Tech team. And then you look at the other end, Wake Forest had 8 turnovers and got annihilated by Louisville, man. And Wake Forest is a good team. Okay, they have a good quarterback. 8 turnovers is such an outlier. I don't suspect that's going to happen again. I'm going Wake Forest both ways, man. Wake Forest both ways. I don't think NC State, Wake Forest has a great offense. I don't think NC State's going to be able to keep up with them offensively, despite them having a respectable defense.
So I'm going to agree with you here. I think this is sort of like my general principle of when it's not good, it's not as bad as it seems. And I really like Wake in a bounce back spot this week. I really don't believe that they are as bad as they showed against Louisville. And as far as NC State, it is very easy to fade NC State right now. I kind of do agree with you. They probably are on a little bit of quit alert this year, but they had a really late comeback against Virginia Tech. I briefly mentioned that game. NC State was down and they looked like a dead animal on the side of the road. And then in the fourth quarter, they scored 12 points and ended up winning that game just miraculously. And MJ Morris, the backup quarterback for NC State, and he went 20 of 29, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. But it's can we trust him to be able to replicate that against Wake Forest, a much better team? Virginia Tech's not very good. Virginia Tech's a 2-16, and they barely scraped one out. This one kind of screams bounce back situation for Wake Forest this week. And I like them big in this game, honestly. I think NC State, you're going to start racking up some L's here pretty soon with the schedule coming up. And I think this is going to be one of them. Wake bounces back, and I like them big. I think they win this by over a touchdown. So I like them to cover that spread easily.
Well, all right. That being said, that concludes our picks.
Mountaineer Nation, let's ride. Mountaineer Nation, let's ride. Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.